A motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Do we have a second, Ms. Robey?
I second.
All in favor? Aye, unanimous. All right, how about the approval of the October 30 committee meeting minutes? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? All right. Okay, any discussion though about any of it? Nope. Okay, great. All right, public comments. Do we have any, Robin? No, and usually we don't because we do invite comments as they pertain to the topics that we're discussing. All right. So we're going to move right into performance expectation 1.2.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to provide evidence of performance expectation PE 1.2, professional learning. PE 1.2, teachers will participate in collaborative learning communities and other professional learning to improve the instruction and student learning, which is part of the advanced Ed 3.5 indicator. So we will begin with evidence from July 1 of this school year until the present. This summer, the district offered several professional development training for our teachers. Beginning August 5th and August 6th, we provided a new hire training, new employee hire training at Battery Creek, where we had over 200 new hires to include teachers as well as support staff that were in attendance. The purpose of that was to give them a jump start on our curriculum expectations, everything aligned to our South Carolina 4.0 rubric, align the sessions that we provided for our new teachers. Some of the sessions that we provided on the 2 days at Battery Creek included assessment sessions, formative and summative assessment information, as well as lesson plans and how do you access data to support the instruction in your classroom. On August 7th through 9th, we provided nonviolent crisis intervention training, which is a district expectation that all schools within Beaufort County have a CPI team, and our crisis intervention training is a program that provides the practical skills and strategies for safely managing disruptive and difficult students. So it's our protection. If we actually have to put our hands on students, we're taught how to do that. So we offered that particular training to all of our staff, to include certified and non-certified, August 7th through 9th. Administrators were also invited to that particular training. The week of August 12th through the 16th, principals and leadership teams plan ongoing on-campus professional development. Each principal submitted a plan to Instructional Service Department, and that plan included what it would look like, what the professional development at each school was provided. On August the 14th, which was a Wednesday, and I think that was a part of the attached document, was a list of district professional development offerings for all, for the district. And I can give you an example. We had training for ELL teachers, world language, bilingual liaison, our new pre-K teachers, media specialists. We covered the MTSS, training for our coordinators. We had training for our gifted and talented lead teachers, and also to include our special education teachers as well as support. On Saturday, October 26th, a group of our teachers participated in a curriculum and technology Saturday. It was housed or Robert Small, hosted at Robert Small's International Academy. That was the opportunity for our tech coaches as well as our teachers to collaborate so that they could teach teachers how to use our instructional technology tools in the classroom Some of the offerings on that particular, for example, one session was tech tips for next read aloud. There was also a new software device which is called Candy, and I had to ask Chrissy Robinson to give me more information, but it was a tool to use to highlight, underline text when we're looking at, particular text for students, devices to.
So it's an active reading
Yes.
strategy?
Exactly.
Would help with EOCs as well.
Correct.
With EOCs?
EOCs.
Yes, ma'am.
So they use the exact software that they would have with the EOC? So
Well,
that
simulated practice.
Simulated.
Yeah.
Because that comes from the state, yes.
Yeah.
ma'am.
And so this was to create an engaging paperless assignment, so it's not paper that they're highlighting, underlining, they use that particular software. The feedback that we got from surveys is that it was, a great success. We will continue to provide professional development, but our focus at this point is that when we talk to principals will provide us their goals that are aligned to their school renewal plans, and their school renewal plans are aligned to the professional needs in their building. So when they're requesting to attend a conference or requesting to have professional development, we look for the alignment in that document. I think Dr. Stratus may have a copy.
I didn't
of
bring
that.
the draft one.
The draft.
Yeah.
This is a draft that we use, our tool within our,
So we had all the principals identify their school level professional development initiatives and their own personal plans and their alignment as we review the school renewal plans. This is a point of reference for us. So let's say Dr. Campbell wants to be able to have John Hattie training. Well, let me understand, let me see where is that identified in the tool you gave, and we keep updating, this was just updated again last night. So the principal feels that their campus has some change, they send us updates, we update our form. So we have a point of reference at the district site to say, this is what you said you're gonna do. So now we're working on a form that goes not only what you're going to do, but how are we gonna measure, what is the impact of this, and what is the sense, what is your idea about capacity building this in for your building?
Yes.
So we're just putting a few more systems in place so that we could have, make better informed decisions.
right, about professional development.
I just wanted to make a comment. I happen to be a certified trainer for CPI, and I think one of the most important things about it is the de-escalation techniques. And certainly, it's about the physical and how to intervene physically, but more importantly are the de-escalation techniques. And I just would
I can include that.
just if you talk about it, I would urge you to mention that as well, because that's,
Would you talk to Pete? Would you be willing to come to a training at one point if we can ask just for input on the de-escalating? Because
Sure.
sometimes that's an area that is missed. Right? Oh, everything's, and it's not, because now you have to go back to be reflective of what's the
Right.
why and have that closure.
like I said, I was a certified trainer. I think my certification's probably run out, but I spent a lot of time the verbal part, the de-escalation strategies, because we want to get there. We don't want to get to the physical
Yeah,
part.
we don't want
to get
prevent that.
Mr.
No.
Campbell.
School renewal plan. Tell me more about that in terms of its relationship to district goals.
So I'm gonna back the bus up, because at this point, the only district goals that we really have identified are the board goals, separate from the academic committee goals that we've already created. So as we go forward with our district school renewal plan process that is tied to the strategic plan for the district, we have taken the information from the listen and learn, and that's gonna be part of our process of going forward and identifying goals and keeping it aligned. So that part, Mr. Campbell, we haven't reached to that point yet. I have to share that with you. But our ultimate goal is that we have the strategic plan, our district school renewal plan, and then that information is shared with the school site so that we have alignment, especially when we visit accreditation. So when accreditation comes in and looks at the school, is the school aligned with the district?
Right.
So their intention
That
is-
was my concern
Yeah.
when you.
Our intention is to keep that alignment, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, it appears that, yeah, the cart's ahead of the horse
Well,
in terms of the individual schools designing what's renewable and what's renewable compared to what the district sees as renewable. That's the perception I get of it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
on the calendar of it, you're 100% aligned, but I think we had an anomaly this year with having a referendum and a lot of listen and learn, so that actually was more, took precedence, but in truth, so, yes.
Can you share what impact the cancellation of the Summer Institute had on professional development?
The impact
Or
of not having,
just speak to it, but yeah, anywhere you want to go with that question.
a lot of it has been informal conversations from principals. A lot of principals who may not have access to the professional development funds, if they're like a non-Title I school, they really rely on the Summer Institute. So I heard a lot of feedback from principals from schools that are non-Title I.
So how does one become a Title I school?
It's based on your demographic. mix.
Well, it's based on your poverty points and your free and reduced lunch.
And who decides that?
That actually comes from a conversation with the superintendent and the board at setting the bar. One of the conversations we are already having is with regard to looking especially at the secondary level. What is that point? And right now it is at 75%, that metric, so it does cut off some opportunities for other schools.
Right.
But realizing as you slide that bar down, we're taking from others. And that's
Right.
there's a realization, but that's a guess
Right.
what, we are casting the net into a larger pool, into a larger area. I don't want to say pool, but into a larger area for service.
So what other funds are used for PD besides Title I?
So some schools, they use their Title I, like we stated. We do have general operating. We do have at-risk funds.
The
Trying to think of-
TSI.
Yes, ATSI schools, those are all the funding sources that we use.
So are we
For
looking at
professional.
pushing down the PD to the school level versus the district level? Is that what I'm hearing? That PD?
No.
No? Okay.
So the question would be more to affect, so School X may be using a predominant model of Fontes and Purnell. They may now need some professional development to lend for the integrity of practice. We're working with principals to, well, what are you gonna pay for it? What can we get a little more, how do I say nicely? We're trying to work with the vendors so that we could tweak them a little more so I can get more for the money. So when you say, is it pushed down to the schools? Schools are taking hold of professional development as they tier for their schools, but the district is actually looking at partnering with the schools in some areas to help pay for them. Some areas that the schools are not Title I schools, and they do need growth. Another area of identifying need is actually through meetings that were being conducted with observations with principals and going through 3 pointed areas. One is talk to me about lesson plans. Talk about the utilization of these, what is the feedback with this? Talk to me about the data utilization in your campus as it is with relation to common assessments. And then taking that opportunity to have that conversation, well, tell me, what does your PLC look like?
That's the next question.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Tell what is your PLC, because there's a misconception with regard to what is PD and what is PLC.
Uh-huh.
So going through it, I've done about 16 of those in-depth conversations with principals, to be direct with you. There is a large amount of work that needs to be utilized for PLCs. So one of the ideas that I'm working with, and I'm pitching this at the principals, what would it look like if we use Morzano's work, The Art and Science of Teaching? The book is free, right? We could PDF it and conduct a book study. That if we do the book study with our principals, would you do the book study then with your staff? But we're gonna have to chunk and target what we're doing, because some schools are not being reflected at their lessons of study. Some schools are not having that conversation of the in-depth unpacking of the standards. Some schools are so advanced, they could be the model for my school. So we're trying to get everyone on the same page. So,
We have the,
and that would be almost free, almost free, to do that type of approach. And that,
a part of our Rubicon, we have the PLC protocol, so revisiting some of our documents. I think that's a part of our plan. We had curriculum mapping in June of the 2019, not July for the new fiscal year. And a part of that work, looking at new standards and kind of unpacking those standards and mapping that information out. But a part of the resources for Rubicon is the PLC a document of how do you conduct PLCs and what that looks like.
So I think what I was looking a little bit more for in, you know, monitoring the performance of the professional learning is some of that. So how many schools do say they are actively having collaborative learning communities, and what does that look like? You know, a large part of your narrative here dealt with a voluntary professional learning, right? So that was on a Saturday, and that's great. I mean, that's wonderful that some teachers want to give up, but what else is there? Because just going on this narrative as evidence of compliance, I think it just, you know, it doesn't tell the whole story.
Right, so you're bridging on a conversation. So what is a standardized model, a minimal model? And I'm saying minimal in a sense that you could extend it at your school, because each school is unique,
All right.
okay? We can't take that away from the geographical and the climate of each school. But when you're asking how proficient are we, I have to push back and say, has that been a true initiative for Beaufort County School District on the in-depth development and practice of true professional learning communities?
I think it depends what school you're in.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, so
Depending on what school.
five very strong principles, very strong, deep understanding of curricular practice and PLCs. And I'm not saying that the other 11 weren't, but of that 11, 7 may be new. So I think my recommendation is, and going forward, there's two. One is looking at what are protocols in practice, building that capacity. We already started doing that with principals this past leadership meeting, actually with work of Dr. Westbury as well, and from the Citadel, and myself. We actually presented information on standards in practice, PLCs, the use of looking at common assessments, common idea of alignment back with design. And that's one of the things I'm pushing for with the high school principals, that are we doing syllabus? Are we doing our semester exam design at the same time? So when it comes time for semester administration, you could always remove questions or standards that haven't been utilized. So those are questions that are happening during our conversations. Be very direct. With that, I think my insight is to go forward and to develop what would it look like for PLCs in our county. What would be protocols that we would like to say that if you were a teacher, I can go from this school, that school, and there's a commonality of practice. Lesson plans, that they're being reviewed at all our schools, is not, you know, because there's a big difference between board configuration and really having that conversation of what is the complexity and logic tied to a standard, and what are the right strategies, not activities, that are aligned for my children to learn. So we are having those conversations. So yes, I would like to see a little more standardized practice, not that it's the same for every school, right? But that these PLCs are being implemented, yes.
In the second paragraph, it says the week of August 12th to 16th, principals and leadership teams planned on-campus professional development. Did each school walk away from that with a plan for professional development for the year?
For that week, well, that was the week that they provided the plan for that week, but it was embedded in their professional development plan for the year. So, for example, if we had an IB school, they more than likely may have had PD with IB that first week. So they wrote in their plan for that week and submitted it to Instructional Service Department for review, and that was their on-campus professional development. So we took one day out of the week where it was district-driven, and that was the document that was attached to the narrative, where we, the district, provided training where we expected particular cohorts of teachers to participate in that training.
But if I could also share in conversation with principals during the past few weeks, one training is a greater request for a teachers college at Columbia, okay, for greater training for teachers. Another one is phonics usage, okay. Another one is actually having authors come in and doing a school-wide book study and sharing that author with 2 schools, so that they could hear the nature and purpose from the author's lens as well. Reaching out and having the opportunity for greater books for our kids, trying to look in advance for the books with some lessons, so the kids can have books during the summer. We're already looking going forward. So one of the things that I have to get clarification is, when we look at the ability of the vision to do expenditures, I'm believing that we will work through the academic committee. Through academic committee, we could look through approval for your recommendation for board expenditures, because I'm trying not to do instructional initiatives pending what comes from us as well. So at some point, I'm gonna ask for a point of clarity amongst us. Is that okay? Because I understand there was a motion made on August 18th. I started August 20th.
You've been here that long?
Yeah, yes,
Uh-huh.
August 20th. And with that, the motion made on the 18th, I've been able to keep instruction moving, because I am not gonna hold up schools. We can't. That would be pushback from parents, teachers, and children, and it's not what we're here about.
Right.
But getting input from our community, our leaders and our teachers, I think I want to be able to work with us so we could go forward with some additional initiatives, have experts come in about professional learning communities, look at how we could do a modified summer institute, maybe not 5 days, but 3 days. Look at key people and building certain capacity, because I'm asking the principals to look at things from that lens now, so that we could do some curriculum writing in June, build that PLC, build the capacity of the administrative team at your school, the APs. They should be instructional leaders as well. So there's.
And that leads into my next question then. Who are the instructional leaders? Is your intent that the instructional coaches, whether it's technology, math, literacy, are they the facilitators of these PLCs? What does that look like? And what's your, this is for August 14th. When's our next PD day?
January 6th.
And what's the plan for that?
So we have CRAZE training,
CRAZE training,
which is a state
boys.
mandatory training, which is half of the day,
Half
which
the
is
day there,
which is
okay.
3, and the other 3 hours will be dedicated to.
Well, they're gonna be dedicated to school sites.
School
So
sites.
you've had a few questions.
Yes.
Number one, the first instructional leader should be the principal and the admin team, but a PLC should be led by teachers. But a principal should know what a good PLC looks like. They should be able to have the same understanding as a teacher for its practice and implementation, but majority, that should be teacher-led. If you really go into the deep research of PLCs, they should be teacher-led. Looking at student evidence, looking at the curriculum guidelines, being able to identify if we are or are not on the mark. That is a process that we have to go to, because to get there, you're even looking at standards and identifying standards by scale, and be able to have a conversation of what a standard looks at a level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and are we breaking up our instruction as a result of how kids are measuring on these scales? Because then you create like an informal, formative model in your classroom to do differentiation. That's gonna take a process. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, but, haven't we been in that process for at least 8 years now?
I cannot speak to that, sir. I can only share what I'm observing.
I mean, PLCs and that formulation was a part of Hilton Head Highs.
And the newbies who came in after you, have they been trained?
Well, that's what I want. Why not? I mean, if
That's what-
that was supposed to be an ongoing process in the
Sustainability.
direction we were going in.
Right. Sustainability, and the principals who came in after you, have they been trained at that as well?
Only one principal, that's it,
And-
this year.
But,
I mean, all I'm saying is, my experience is that we just reinvent the wheel and reinvent the wheel and reinvent the wheel every 5 or 6 years in education. Mazzano and all of those theories have been out there. We've started the process of going in that direction, and then we stop and we do something else for 3 or 4 years with no corroborating statistics or evidence, so whether it worked or didn't work. And then we switch, and then we go to something else. So, I mean, and I understand what you're saying. You're looking now to see where we are with those.
You're
I
making
am,
a
so yes, I am.
baseline assessment
Yeah.
of
Yes,
where
I
we
am.
are.
And as you're looking, I'd like you to, ask for the background information on it, why it wasn't sustained, and if there were new principals, why weren't they made aware that this is the process we are in? You know, even before they came on board.
Yeah.
Because you come into, you know, the team's already set, all you have to do is manage. So, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking 10, 20 years from now, where we will be.
We'll be in the same place unless we,
There you go.
unless we are determined that we are on a course and we stick to the course and we have a mechanism for measuring, okay, these people have been trained in that, these people haven't, so we've got to have some type of accountability, or otherwise we're just in the same place every, and those of us who are educators know that that's what happens. It gets, you know, PLCs I think are certainly well researched, well vetted.
And they've been around here.
They've been around a
Everywhere.
decade.
Yeah, and it's a good,
12
it's a
years.
good system. But,
we
you know,
have
but
to
you
use
gotta
it
have
with
the people, the teachers gotta be educated in it.
Yes.
And that's gotta be a continued thing if
Yes.
you're getting new teachers, 200 new teachers every year.
Every year.
That's, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the PLC is the best practice because it makes the individual look at what the standard is. And that's number one.
And looking at student learning.
Second part is then having that alignment with the right delivery to what is necessary to meet the complexity of a standard. When you make mention to Marzano's work is a reflection of a meta-analysis of over 200 other research. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
Because did he do the research?
Nope. He just looked at everybody else's.
Right,
Brilliant,
right.
right? And formulated a model with his placemat, all right? And it's a great place to at least start that can get a commonality of language and delivery and practice that will lend to some sustainability. If you go deeper in Marzano, you start talking about John Hattie's work, that is where it is the how of instruction really came from Hattie's work. That is something that I would like the academic committee to look at that. It would be a nice thing so that we could take key people to John Hattie, to some conference and work of his, and at the same time run parallel training of Marzano's reliable schools, building their capacity in the area of standards and scales and fair grading, right? And grading on proficiency of
Yes.
where you are within the standard,
Yeah,
right?
man.
Those
You've
are
been through
things.
that, man.
Yeah,
And there are some that are,
Still, yeah,
But
It's-
the essence of that is being able to build the capacity of our educators to make sure that we have a release of control, right? Because none of this works with stand and deliver.
no.
And that's the other side of that, and that's where other things come into play with our students. So it is about having a stronger PD model, being able to have the point of reference of what we have done and haven't done,
yeah.
and the evidence of practice.
Yeah, and
Yes.
also the people, the experts who've been into this arena for some time. You got some people in these schools that have gone through this,
Yeah.
Right.
and they understand it fully. Now, the fact that you backed away from it might have made them a little bit apprehensive about coming forward. But these are people who should be leading the process in these schools.
Building capacity.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is one of the impressions also received at speaking in depth with principals, Mr. Campbell. Yes, sir.
Dr. Campbell, go ahead.
What is this last attachment here? Are we done that?
Well, I
okay, are you
just
done?
wanted,
Okay,
okay,
go
just
ahead.
one question. With the PD, as we were looking through it on August 14th, was there PD for math and science, STEM, or do we, so I guess what I'm concerned about is that we have to go to the board and say, this is evidence of compliance of professional learning. And from our conversation, a lot more has come out. I don't know that I could fully support that this is evidence that we are compliant with professional learning when, you know, half of the narrative is a voluntary, so you can't really, I mean, it's great to put, and that's fabulous. The tech coaches to give up and to plan that was wonderful and everything. But there's so much more PD and professional learning and collaboration that's going on. I know there is, Ms. McKenzie, I know there is. And for for us to then say to the, you know, the board, this is evidence of the professional learning that's occurring in our district, I think you're shorting yourselves.
I will add.
I mean,
Well-
that's only my opinion.
Well,
Now,
this-
Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on the same page now. First of all, you gotta document all the other things those schools
So input from
at least say they're gonna do.
Yeah.
All right, because at least we got on paper that's, you know, that's the strategies. Right here,
It would
if
be nice
this
to
looks
see
like
some
this
of
is
that
it.
alignment, you know?
Yeah,
It does.
and we know that you've already told us more, right,
Yeah.
told us a lot more.
But it's a little early for
Yeah.
that to have been put in here,
But even just that plan, that this is what we're
Yeah.
doing, and when we know you've been here 3 months today, you know.
I didn't
and-
realize that.
3 months today.
Thanks.
Feels like a year, I know, but still, you know, and I just feel that
Yeah,
this
put
is
the
not
plan.
the evidence to
Put the
show that
plan in.
Beaufort County School District is compliant with professional learning.
Is it possible then, because I would like to extend that, so we reach out to the school sites to get their PD agendas
Yes.
and their preschool agendas, okay?
Wow,
and
what a
make-
bigger picture.
Right,
Yes.
so in order to,
Yeah, we have
that would be the lens that I would ask, because we haven't been in the habit of asking the agenda for practice. I am asking that upon observations with principals, is one of their points of evidence for me, okay? But we could ask to have those agendas to be part of this, so we can,
Get a better
We have that.
idea
Get-
of what's
yeah.
going on in the
Okay.
district.
Yeah. Because you
Um,
mentioned here that they made plans.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
let's
we-
see what those plans
Yeah,
are.
we-
Let's
yeah,
have
that's fine.
evidence of the plan.
is it possible for also consideration that this PE actually happen maybe a little later as well in the year?
Yes.
I mean, when
We
you
were
start.
talking.
All right.
Maybe a couple times
Other
during the year.
Yes.
One time
So we
is
can
not
have
enough.
markers.
Yeah, so
Right.
that
Thank
we
you.
can
Okay.
have markers.
That would-
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
This-
Yeah.
We have the 10 professional development days. The 5 are at the beginning of the year. We don't have another professional development day that makes it mandatory for a teacher
Right.
until January. And then
Right.
the other remaining professional development days aren't until the end of the year.
Right.
So when we have professional development in between those dates, it is voluntary.
Right. No,
Until,
understand.
yeah, so
Understand.
that's another part of
Yeah.
just making sure that we have a system in place that kind of lends it to ongoing professional development, and we're reporting
Right.
back to you
Right.
and what we're doing.
And see, those that don't have the benefit of either listening to this meeting today, or, you know, they would read this and see that this is the evidence, and this is not,
Not
in my
deep enough.
opinion, enough to support compliance with this PE. And it's also not the whole story, because we know there's more going on.
Right, I mean, Dr. Stratus mentioned what she was doing, but, you know, all of that's gotta be in a coherent with our plan, our overall strategy. So every school, gotta look at how their professional development not only is enhancing what they're doing in the particular site, but how it also corresponds to where we're going with this. I mean, it's almost impossible for us to get an idea of that.
So if I could add, your
Yeah.
January 6th, so we do have the CRAZE training, what we've asked for our testing coordinators, we've moved up the MAP testing by a few days, and I'm pushing the division to have the MAP data ready by the 20th of December. So when principals go on their holiday break, they will have their homework,
Yeah.
so that they can use part of the day on January 6th, get with your leadership team,
Yeah.
then the next day, have that information ready for your, for your teachers. Don't have it be now we lose 2 more weeks into the semester. So that's one thing we have put in place as well.
You're indirectly, directing that. And that's, that would be what we trying to do.
Yes, sir.
But you gotta do it, or else they gonna push back and say, nobody ever told them, or they
Yeah.
thought they were on their own. I can just tell you, different personalities and education, you know?
That's not they will be reminded lightly in December at our leadership meeting, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
But and I have been sharing that with every principal I'm meeting with. So.
Okay, so we are going to look at this again probably in, we'll be developing the work plan.
Yes.
And
if the next PD is in January, it would be nice to have a report after that. And
Yeah, you would have
February,
a
March.
board meeting on the 21st of January, where I was hoping to have the ATSI schools report. So I would, like, after that, is you said
Yeah,
it the following, in
February.
February?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, February, yeah.
how many, faculty meetings a month do the principals have?
Depends on their school.
Okay.
It depends, no, seriously.
They
We had one every week at the
It
school.
it depends.
Some did it every, once a month.
They may not call it faculty meeting, but
Well, the
some
reason
sort
I
of.
ask is, we used to have two required every month, and so I made one a faculty meeting and one professional
yeah,
development.
that's what I was
I mean,
Exactly.
that was the way to do it.
That's how I operate.
And PLC is once a week.
Yes.
And so before you know
I did
it,
it
teachers'
twice a week.
plannings are gone. Just absolutely gone. There's no
But
time to plan, there's
With
no
a
time.
delayed start at the high schools, they get a little extra time. And there's ways of embedding it and not giving duty to teachers.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that
high
it,
school has more
exactly, let me respect
flexibility.
your time, that should give you that time for planning, and then supervision can be executed in another model.
Mhm.
And usually it's one day out of the week, and it's not several days. Like like there's a high school that I know, they have, meetings on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday is either the PLC, it's the faculty meeting, it may be a leadership team meeting or a data meeting. And so it rotates each week, but on Tuesday, they know that in some capacity, there's a meeting.
Right. And then Wednesday's IEP meetings. And then Thursday, you know, so anyway, before you know it, you only have
Elementary
60% of the
teachers
week
are probably
to plan.
busiest.
They are,
And when you speak to elementary principals,
yeah.
elementary teachers are the backbone.
Mhm.
And
Because they're playing
They're
period less
eating
than.
lunch with their
Yeah,
children.
It's less than
right?
less than an hour.
yes, they
They
are.
are,
They are,
yeah.
and they're probably in 2 PLCs and reviewing student work a week plus the IEP meetings.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are
And they have no
self-contained,
time.
they teach
Yeah.
all
They have no
subject
time.
areas.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
lastly, what is this?
Yeah.
This was attached to this PE
What was it?
and some program, Reading Plus.
Oh,
Reading
that-
Oh, that was,
That was-
should not,
no, that
that
should have
should have been
been
in our December, that was a mistake by,
Yeah, that wasn't,
may I remove that?
that's somebody else's, that's not mine.
Actually,
Everybody's got it.
okay, so if I may, all right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but
So I
that's
can
something we're
remove
gonna have
that
a
page.
discussion in December about. There will be PD tied with that. We are right now in the process of looking at a pilot for 1,200 students total within the district for free, pushing for a 6-month pilot. Normally, they would only do a pilot for 4 months. There will be PD tied with it, but it's a secondary model for reading to be utilized. So that was just an informant. See, it's not in mine, so that's why I do, yeah. I'd
Yeah,
say,
we were-
yeah.
We were
And
trying
it
to figure out how that's
requires a
related.
structured reading model for minimal, and I am asking for the schools who will be part of the pilot to be part of a 90-minute, it's 90 minutes a week, and that PD is part of this free pilot. So we could build the capacity of these teachers and then look at this,
Okay, so we're gonna get to this now?
Yes.
yes, all
Okay,
right, so we'll look at their data
Yeah.
both ways.
And it's secondary.
So that's
And it is,
nothing,
I have.
So I need to, this needs to come out of board docs, that,
Yeah,
that,
Yes,
okay.
not a part of it.
Yes, ma'am.
okay, yeah, I was a little confused.
I'm
sorry.
It was in our
Yeah, we're paying a lot.
I mean, we,
Learning
I
that.
have it in board docs because we've attached the whole document,
Oh.
so I'll have it removed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we are not going to vote on this, we are tabling this for.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, all right, so then the next one was PE 1.9 guidance services.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Henderson. I'm also the director of the school counselors. Up until 2014, the then guidance counselors in Beaufort County School District worked in silos. The counselors north of the Broad didn't know who worked at south of the Broad and vice versa. Effective July 2014, the prior leadership decided to put a permanent director of school counseling at the district level, as most school districts within the state of South Carolina, to coordinate and collaborate with state level professionals, organizations in regards to mental health, and to ensure that professional development was strategic for school counselors to ensure they met the needs, social, emotional, and academic needs of students. I will start in reference to the South Carolina Comprehensive Guidance Model. which was put in the package. In October of 2018, it was revised to align with the American School Counselors Association 4th edition model, which is also here. The objective of the school counseling program, as I said originally, guidance counselor, about 8 years ago, the term was changed to school counselors. We do not guide students, we empower and educate students. So the objective was to improve student outcome. You have a packet that has a newsletter as such with the data on the back, and also a newsletter that is turned in. That's the school counselor comprehensive model that's on the board.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That,
Yes?
that, I think just the cover letters, that the actual model is about so thick.
Right.
Yes. So that's the actual model here on the
All of
desk.
this is.
And that's just a couple of the cover pages along with the performance expectation, which I will discuss and review here shortly.
We put 53 pages in here, so I think we have.
So, again, the objective of the school counseling program of Beaufort County School District is to be strategic to ensure that students' academic and their behavior and discipline needs are met. The school counselors of Beaufort County School District, effective 2014, have to establish goals and objectives. In the past, they had what were normally measures, which was obsolete and ineffective. All school counselors at every level now has to submit their goals, SMART goals that align with the school renewal plans. In the past, this was not required. Here, for example, are the elementary school goals. Each school has to identify 2 to 3 goals. The deadline to submit these were as of last Friday. So I've received all the elementary, middle, and high school goals. A team of us will review those goals to ensure they align with the school renewal plan performance goals. And they had to outline also how are we going to be instrumental in the school achieving their school renewal plan goals that were identified.
Can you, like,
Give me an example.
Of course I can. For instance, high school graduation rate, yes. High school graduation rate at the high school level. Every year for the past, I think, 6 years, the graduation rate in Beaufort County School District has improved. And school counselors work in collaboration with the leadership team in improving that graduation rate. And what they do, they work along with the teachers, the leadership team. For those students who are failing, you have school conferences. Again, they're part of that data team meeting that were discussed. School counselors are leaders in the school also. They're part of the leadership team as mandated by the South Carolina Comprehensive Model and the ASCA model. It states that school counselors should be a part of the leadership team. They're impacting academics. They're doing scheduling. They need to be a part of that process to ensure that the student is on course to meet South Carolina graduation requirements, that they're also college and career ready at the end of that graduation period.
As well as working with leadership for the survey at 11th grade that's completed, which is part of the report card for the high schools. So that's actually a critical part, because 2 schools feel they could have done better.
An example of an elementary goal? Yeah,
An
just
example of
taken
an
from there?
elementary, yes. One of the examples of an elementary goal is to address attendance. A student that has excessive absence or a student that has behavior issues, and putting in interventions to diminish those behaviors, working along with the behavior specialist at developing a contract with that student, but also bringing in the parent and also monitoring that student performance in the classroom. If that student is disruptive, you want to put in interventions that's going to diminish those disruptions so the students not only become successful, but not also interfere with the students in the classroom. Also, a disrupted student is going to hinder a teacher from doing his or her maximum potential in educating the students. And I'll pass this around and you can see the goals that are outlined in here. Not only in here, they have their year-long calendar. And how do we monitor this? We do site visits for the school counselors. And not only that, everything that the school counselors do today, we have a school counselor shared drive. When we conduct professional development, there's an attendance roster. It's mandatory that they attend training. And if they're not there, they have to email me and tell me why they're not going to be at training. They get the schedule in August for the entire school year. So at that time, they're directed to put it on their calendar. Here's an example. For instance, here's the agenda, which is a booklet. That was the agenda for August. Inside the school counselor agenda, you had noticed that presenters come from all over the state. and we talk about those issues about Power School update. We have new school counselors. We need to ensure that they're proficient in Power School and how to read data. Victim advocates, one of the major challenges that we're facing in education today are the social and emotional needs of students, the trauma-informed student. A school counselor to know how to address those needs. Working with Beaufort Jasper Comprehensive Health for those students who do not have the resources, for instance, to get immunization. So it's important that the counselor knows what resources are available in town. If a new counselor comes here, for instance, we have a new counselor at Well Branch Elementary School. She is clueless. By us meeting collaborative together every month, all 66 school counselors, now the school counselors north of the Broad know the school counselors south of the Broad. There's a leadership team that works along with me at the elementary and middle level. They know, in addition to the human resource mentor and the building mentor, there's another level of support for school counselor, elementary, middle, and high. We work closely with adult ed. If a student unfortunately make that decision that I do not want to attend high school anymore, we work closely with Dr. Morale at Adult Ed to ensure that that student is successful. Case in point, I met with Dr. Morale and a high school principal this morning, such case, and at the end of the day, Dr. Morale walked out of the building and that parent followed her to Adult Ed to ensure that student continue on with his education. So it is definitely a close working team effort with the principals at every level. We work closely with Kiki Swinton to ensure that all counselors know the process for mandated reporting. Again, oftentimes when you work in what we found in the school, if a teacher witnesses an event, they think they're telling the counselor in their duties and responsibilities. No,
I mean, every teacher has to go through that.
Exactly.
No, I mean, so they know that it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't end there. But, so your PE says that to ensure that each student has access to guidance services that include, but are not limited to counseling, appraisal, mentoring, staff consulting, referral, and educational and career planning.
Correct.
So can you address that? Because to me, what that says, ensure that each student has access. So how do we get there? So I understand, like, the counselors do a myriad things, and a lot of what you mentioned, I think some social work. There's no doubt that there's an overlap.
Of course.
But how do we ensure that each student has access to all this?
Well, a couple of ways, several ways we do that. Students that are grades 6 through 8, it is mandatory by the Education Economic Development Act that school counselors meet with those students, not only students, parents and students, minimally once a year. And that has to be documented in Power School, that those conferences are held, and it's required by law that 80% of those are face-to-face, and that's law.
So that's 6 through 8, not just 8th grade IGPs?
No, from 8th grade, 8th through 12.
I was going to say, because 6th graders don't have
And I will tell you, and we're working with schools, for instance, even here, we've created an internal somewhat IGP, and working with Ms. Ballard, we're looking at how we can take that down to the 6th grade level.
Okay. Because it's mandatory for 8th grade.
It's mandatory for 8th through 12th grade, and it's documented in Power School.
And that's monitored.
And
Yes.
and at the end of the year, the State Department of Education may extract all that data and share it with the Chamber of Commerce, the State Chamber of Commerce. And if you look on the back page 4 through 5, the district hosts over 50 events a year. For instance, recently we held financial aid night, not only south of the Broad, north of the Broad. We want to make it accommodating to parents so they do not have to travel far. We had the district college fair in October that was held at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort, and there were over 2,000 students that attended. It was an amazing event. And Dr. Campbell and I worked on this for years, and we take no credit for the University of South Carolina, Beaufort hosting it. 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, we bused all students either to Bluffton or to Battery Creek, all juniors and seniors, to ensure that they had that exposure to college awareness. A lot of our schools take students on college campus tours. However, there was a conflict 2 years ago with a date, and we shared with University of South Carolina, Beaufort, you all going to have to eat this one, and it's going to be held at night. And we found out it worked better because not only were the students there with teachers, they were there with their parents.
Right.
And parents were able to interact with those 80 college representatives that were there. So those conferences are held, and every conference that the school counselors have with parents is documented in Power School, or an enrich, so we document all of those. And naturally, because of FERPA, everybody don't have access to those
Right.
according to the subject matter at hand. And if you look on here, you'll notice that there's a list of, we have 66 school counselors in Beaufort County School District. And I also included a list of student counselor ratio. I don't know if you all have that.
You saw it,
You
yeah.
saw that.
Yeah,
That-
so can we talk
That
about
strikes out to me like,
Yeah.
all the stuff you're talking about is impossible for those guidance counselors to get accomplished.
And I'm,
And obviously, I mean, that's not your problem.
No.
But, you know, I mean, typically, in my mind, the guidance counselor should see a student at least once a year. But in order to be effective, they need to see that student more than once a year.
and I totally agree,
I
and that's the
mean,
reason why I
so you
included
got
this.
those numbers.
That's why I wanted.
Well, you want us to see
Oh,
how
definitely.
impossible that is?
And I will tell you, I have been saying that for years. The school that we're sitting in right
It's a
now,
little manipulative. So it's an opportunity.
if you look at H.E. McCracken, and Lindsay Skirtich and I have this conversation quite often. Since the end of the school year, she's enrolled over 100 students. She has two school.
115 kids.
She has two school counselors. If you look there, that's a ratio of one school counselor has a load of 462 students. That's impossible.
Oh, it is.
And I will tell you, at one time, our school district, about 10 years ago or so, we had, in addition, a CDF, a career development facilitator,
Yes.
that worked along
a
with the
big
counselor
plus.
at the middle and high school. Today, we have two. One north of the Broad
One
to
south.
serve every school, and one south of the Broad. That's impossible.
So
So when
you-
we look at these numbers, it is impossible to do everything. Are we asking them to do above and beyond? I would tell you, I'll email a counselor 1 o'clock in the morning, they'll reply back. Because it is ongoing, it's never ending, because when something occurs in the school, when there's trauma, when there's an incident in the school, generally it's gonna go to that school counselor for the most part.
Yeah.
So, but the numbers is something that, please, if you all would look over there, the numbers, you will see that.
Well, and I
Is
think
where
the
Chad-
state in their newest budget, or the thing that's out there that they're considering, had numbers for that, as well as for the career development.
That's right.
That they were going to fund those.
Revisit.
But,
Yeah.
also, so they're talking about funding, but at the same time, probably not Beaufort County, because they see us as being a wealthy county and that, you know.
So how do you decide who gets, well, I just want to share, this information was given to us at a previous academic committee meeting. Mr. Cambria provided this, and this is from American School Counselor Association. It goes on to explain all the myriad things they do, like you just said. But this American School Counselor Association national model,
Yes,
Right.
250 to 1,
Right.
so, then you go to your ratio,
which is state mandated, and the
460.
EDA 300 to 1.
300
That's
to
the
1.
state.
It's 300 to 1.
so how is it that, like Beaufort Middle School, 500 to 1,
That's a budget.
H.E. McCracken, like you just said, 462 to 1. Look at, I mean, but you can, everybody has this information, but how is it decided, like, Beaufort High School has a 237 to 1, but a different high school has 360 to 1. How do you decide?
And I would tell you, again, with population growth, that is a staffing issue that has to be discussed in the spring when that principal sit down with Alice
With HR.
Walton, with HR, when they bring these numbers to the table. And like I said, I've had some of these conversations already, for instance, with Lindsay Skirty, you know, and her question is, Jerry, is there any way we can get that as of now?
And what's the answer?
And I have discussed it with HR, the budget has been approved for the school year, we cannot.
So, but is there, you know, do we shift? Do we co-work? I mean, is there, well,
And
right
it's-
here in Bluffton, everything is so close together, do they share? No?
And the only thing that they do share, I would tell you, as far as support, is that CDF, but again, that's one person. That is only one person. And again, it is so important, if we want to really address the students' social and emotional and
No, I
academic.
do want to, we have to.
We have, we
Right.
need to
Yeah.
ensure that the school counselors have the support and the schools are staffed properly. For instance, like Beaufort High, I will tell you, up until 2 years ago, they had 4 counselors. The leadership team advocated because of the increase in population, and the numbers were increased to 5. The number was increased to 5. Definitely, it makes a difference in impact and services.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a glossy word, but for the student, I'll tell you what they see. The guidance counselors don't matter because we don't see them.
right.
They don't have any effect on us.
And when we.
So, that being the perception, which is reality to them, we may have to change the scope of the guidance counselor.
Yeah, because I heard social
I
work.
mean, there's a lot of stuff there that maybe somebody else needs to take charge of, but the guidance counselor needs to counsel the children, and especially at this time and age when there is a social, economic,
And I would tell you also, most
Emotional-
schools, the social workers share.
Yeah.
The schools, social workers share between 2 schools.
2 or 3.
So what are the numbers? I mean, not, some
We
schools
didn't bring
have,
that over today.
And
Some have
we didn't
one,
bring-
but some
yeah.
said they have
Most
.5.
of them share.
They have .5.
Did we add, remember, we
Yeah,
added
we added
last
supposed to,
year,
yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
as of right now, they're sharing.
Yeah.
and not every school has a behavior management
Correct,
specialist.
Correct.
Right. Ms.
Amanda.
Allred, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna add that, on top of everything the counselors do, we also have with our special needs students, oftentimes there's counseling minutes in their
Correct,
IEPs
exactly. And
that
that-
they have to meet, and these counselors also serve as 504 coordinators.
Exactly.
Yes, they
Which
do.
takes an extraordinary amount of time. And I have to tell you, looking at these numbers today, I had my own issues with a certain counselor in this district recently, and my attitude has totally changed seeing her caseload. Because, and I already have an open attitude most of the time about them, because I know they're overworked. But that made a lot of sense to me now, why she struggles so much. And then what's happening as a result of this is that the kids that need the services the most are not getting them.
That's right.
Because we cannot intervene with those behavior issues and things like that effectively. We just can't.
Right.
In
It's
addition,
just
there-
a problem that just is,
Yes, it is definitely a staffing, in addition to serving on those, as on the IEP team, they're part of the MTSS, RTI
Sure they
team.
are.
So when they're
And they're
consumed
almost
with it,
full-time
they're pulled out
consumed.
for the 504 meeting, they're pulled out for the IEP meeting, they're part of the RTI process. And with all of those, committee and those meetings, they have to ensure they document.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
there's a
the
lot of
documentation has to occur. So,
and you're singing the song of a social worker, a
Exactly,
special ed
exactly.
teacher, a speech
and
therapist.
administrators
all-
sometimes, they feel
Exactly.
in every, I've
It's-
seen counselors.
So what would you ask for?
Yes.
Ideally, I would be honest, 250 to 1.
Let me
Ideally.
counselors go.
So what do you need to do that? I'm sure you've done the numbers.
But about 11, we're looking at about 11 other additional, if we want to
Yeah.
effectively and efficiently serve the students, and not only the students, and I would tell you as a school counselor, there was times that I had to counsel with new teachers who wanted to quit.
Right.
So it's not only are they serving the students, I've had to sit down and counsel with parents. So the counselor's not only working with the students, they're working with all stakeholders. They have to have community members to come in and support in regards to career awareness. So again, if we could get another 11 counselors, again, ideally, if the caseload was 250, that's realistic where they can service those students.
And then how do you hold a guidance counselor accountable? What?
May I share with it? So from a principal perspective, I think we have to have some type of expectation in writing,
Yes.
all right?
I think for
with
every
regard-
grade.
Yes, and I don't wanna say that it has to be an AR, but sometimes, something that's pushed out as a bulletin of performance coming out either from my shop with agreement with board, that these are the expectations and role of a guidance counselor.
Yes.
Following the law, so that they're not doing testing, we're meeting the ratio, meeting the needs. Beyond the job description of HR.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. and
Beyond
These are
the-
the expectations that you're held
Yes.
accountable for.
And
I
then,
think Tony wanted to say something.
Yeah.
too.
Are you finished though?
well, but I just wanna add, we need to also look at adding counselors in the area of need for our sped kids. So that we have coordinators that And I'm creating an HR issue by saying this out.
I know,
I know,
but we
yeah,
have
so-
an HR issue.
Right, right, and it's national, so,
Yeah.
Right.
but we should have, the schools with the highest amount of sped students should have a coordinator tied to that school.
Full-time.
Yeah.
Full-time,
Full-time.
providing services, IEP alignment, making sure academic needs are happening, and being able to monitor the instruction of our children. Are we meeting the needs? So that's critical, and so when you look at the guidance counselors, there's a little more, because I need assistance with the amount of sped, and I call them a coordinator, at the school site, who is that LEA. You know, it's, and I
Yeah,
apologize.
no. Tony?
No, it's fine. My question was going to be that there are several schools here whose ratio is very close to the national standards. And is there any validity that that ratio is providing the desired outcomes that we're looking for in our schools? And if so, that would create the proponent for making the base argument that it is effective and it does work. But these are the things that we need to validate and verify.
That's why I asked that question about how are we what metric are we using to see? Because I hear from parents. I spoke to a parent just a month ago that said, she spent $2,000 for a private guidance counselor to look over transcripts because the transcripts were sent to the high school incorrectly or never made it there, or that the course load was, you're shaking your head, that's what it was. This child's course load was not such that it was going to line up with
To the college that they're targeting to.
and, you know, but this person can spend $2,000 to do that. That shouldn't have to happen. But how do we know that our,
Well, there's evidence base. We have objectives, we have outcomes, there's a standard, there's a national curriculum, there's scope and sequence. Do the schools that have the lower ratio favorite that we see there, and there's some that are pretty close to the national standards, how are they performing with our students, with attendance, with academic performance, with discipline, with
And I,
yeah.
the profiles going out accurately, et cetera. There are standards that can be met.
Ms. Cambria, and then,
Well, I had a question for Ms. Henderson, or Dr. Henderson, I don't know. But a lot of these schools have a high poverty index, and so how does that, because Mr. Cambria is saying, oh, well, we'll know if their ratio is correct and, you know, then it's effective or it isn't, but in these schools with a high poverty index, I would think, and you can tell me, if you're a counselor in a school that has a high poverty school, a caseload of 250 students might be more challenging than a school with, 40% poverty rating.
Especially with
an
regard to
excellent question. And what,
Well, can I follow up on that, because I think it's important. Are we going to use that standard for class size in the general population? So a low poverty or high poverty school, will their class size for the general education be lower than another school maybe doesn't have the same? You have to have some consistency
right, and
in
we
how,
are, you're right, those are all,
these are all the things that we need to debate. I'm not saying that 250 is the cure-all.
no, it's not, and there's gotta be evidence that 250, and as, Jody said, it could be that it's,
But do we need, in those schools, if it is 250 students is more challenging in one school than another, then do you need a smaller caseload in those areas? Or-
yeah.
I think-
And
And
Ms.
there's some of
Ms.
those
Cambria
things
has
like
been
social
waiting.
work and through Title I funds too.
Yeah.
Those positions are often covered, right, from that, in the socioeconomic, the Title I schools? They'll add, like, we have extra social workers already in some of those schools.
or they're paying for staffing.
Yeah, a lot
Right.
of times they do.
Using for
Right, so we
additional
need to look at
teachers.
that too,
Right.
though, all the
So-
way through.
Sometimes
Yeah.
So each
we're-
school,
they're-
you can't judge,
No,
each school is
no,
different.
Right, but there's
It-
gotta be some type of, quantifiable, metric to say that, okay, this is why we're going to put, So can I just let Ms. Cambria speak, just for, yes?
I spent most of my life as a school counselor, and for about 10 years, I was also in charge of that. And I want to tell you that we got down our numbers to 150 students per counselor. And it was never enough.
And even then, it wasn't enough, yeah. Yeah. But that would be at least a great start, if we could get anywhere near that.
Because counselors also teach,
Classroom guidance.
teach classroom and it is very often overlooked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have always worked in schools of poverty, about 15 years at the school level as a counselor. And I was a part of the leadership team that opened Well Branch Early College High School 9 years ago. And as we know, all the kids at Well Branch today receive free lunch. So those were the challenges we made, but I would tell you that it was the most challenging job that I've ever done. After spending 20 years in the military, Well Branch Early College High School surpassed that. What made that school successful, even to today, Mona Lisa Dixon does, that school is open 7 days a week. My first 2 years at Well Branch, I did not take one day off. I worked Saturdays and Sundays. When you have parents that have 2 jobs, if you really want to educate the kids, you have to educate the parents also, so they can see the value of a good education. So on Sundays, there may have been only 3 hours where I could meet 5 parents, or so many parents that worked over at Hilton Head of Bluffton who could not meet me during the weekday, who arrived home at 8 o'clock at night. Saturdays were, for the most part, a normal work day. So the things to address those issues, which Mona still does, she still does those things today, they're non-traditional things.
Sure.
Even though it was in Well Branch, the counselors today have about 250 to 1, but those strategies and interventions are still in place today.
So Will Branch looks like 228 to
Exactly.
1. So tell me, is that one counselor position paid for by TCO, or are these 2 Beaufort County school
To
districts?
Beaufort County.
And then they have an additional counselor paid for by TCO?
An advisor,
for the-
college advisor for the dual credit
So
program.
that takes that load
Of
off
course,
of
it
the
makes a big
counselors.
difference.
Sure it does, yeah, I imagine it would.
Yeah,
Okay.
your point is well taken, and in terms of guidance, my concept of guidance is they do need to be put back down to the ground. I don't, the other rules, college fair and all that stuff, we can find somebody else to do that.
CDF to do that.
Yeah, I don't know who, but somebody else can do it. But the student needs to talk to the guidance counselor. Guidance counselor needs to feel the student, and then you're gonna get that groundwork that you're talking about that happened at Whale Branch. Because the guidance counselor feels what this child needs, and that extends to the rest of the family in the school. And then, but unless that's happening, we're gonna have more problems where we're trying to fix it at the end. We're gonna try to send them to college now after not talking to them for 10 years. That's just not gonna work.
And I would like to add one other thing. Several years ago, again, under previous leadership, the contract days of counselors were cut. Elementary school counselors work 190 days. Middle school counselors work 205, high school work 210. Basically, they're leaving their school, and I know as a high school counselor, when I would leave Well Branch around June 15th, I couldn't leave because there was still so much work to do, and counselors are not getting paid to work their summers. And I would tell you the high school counselors are working summers to ensure transcripts are transmitted out, that those change in post-secondary plans. I want transcripts to go to this college in addition to scheduling change, enrolling new students, military parents. As a veteran, we transfer in during the summertime, and counselors are not in the building. We can't mandate those counselors work during the summertime when
So
their
have you-
contract expires.
Have you
We yes,
brought that forward?
Yes.
You brought that forward?
yes.
And so is that your plan to bring it forward again this year?
I will continue to bring it forward. Because we need to better, I know as a council, we need to better serve the students.
And if I could speak there, because I did that as a principal for my campus, and it made a night and day difference with the alignment and readiness of my kids to have their schedules correct at day 1. Here, with a state, with a requirement after 10 days, no secondary schedule changes, there's a pressure put on these counselors here that's even greater than in other states. So just for a point of consideration, and being able to have that registration during the summer, big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the schools doing that, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't wanna put any pressure on the board, but,
No, never.
but it appears that that's where the pressure is gonna come. And we gotta find some money for these people.
It's gonna be tough decisions when you look at
Yeah.
what the priorities are. It's very hard to serve everyone.
I don't wanna diminish the importance of other things,
Yes.
so, yeah.
We still have some ARs to go over. I just have to register a concern with the PE. When we go back to the indicator, ensuring that each student has access to guidance service. Mel, Kathy, do you feel that this evidence here, which talks about what a guidance counselor does, other than the ratio, speaks to that ensuring that each student has access? I mean, are we good with presenting this to the full board as a compliance with the expectation?
Well, it's just a list of what's available. There's nothing here that states.
And I would share, in the past, I brought 4-H folders, and I was told, just bring the list, and if need be, we'll bring it. So that's why it's just the list is there. In the past, I have brought evidence of all of the above.
I thi- Mel?
Oh, of evidence?
I
Yes,
don't
and I have
think-
that, yes, I have evidence.
I don't think I mean, the evidence is in those numbers. I don't think yeah, I mean, that's the evidence.
Well, that's why I said, other
We don't
than,
need a nice pretty write-up saying what these guidance counselors are doing, because the evidence that they can't do what's written there.
they can't, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
so it's on us to decide, you know.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean, rubber stamping it or not rubber stamping it is immaterial. What our dedication is to the student and what we think with Dr. Stratus and Dr. Rodriguez's mindset behind it. Where are we going with it now that we know?
Right, especially,
For information, this probably needs to be a full board discussion.
yeah, to talk
Yeah,
about this
that's
and to
what we're talking
enlighten,
about, right?
you know, about just the change in the number of days for guidance counselors, which probably speaks to that parent that has to spend $2,000 to get it done, but, you know, that's the kind of information, and like Ms. Walrad just said, all of a sudden, she realizes why that guidance counselor, you know, so would we have a motion then to bring this to the full board?
That discussion.
Yes, sir?
Just a process question.
Uh-huh.
How would, if Dr. Henderson provides a plan or recommendation to Human Resources, what is the process for the board to understand the plan, see the plan, analyze the plan as you start vetting your budget? I mean, I heard several months ago that we're going to allocate $1 million for resource officers. We made a commitment to that, okay? My question is, how many guidance counselors could we hire for $1 million? That's my question, because that's the process question. And how do we weigh the priority? Maybe it would have to be $500,000 for resource officers, $500,000 for guidance counselors. They do intermingle, they do work.
How you thinking? How you thinking the way we're thinking?
That's why the process is critical,
Yes.
you know, rather than keep things in isolation.
And if you speak to those in law enforcement, that's more of a model, that we want to have more police in the schools. But what you just brought forward is a model that law enforcement is pushing forward.
Correct.
Is more of a collaborative model.
Well,
Yes, yes.
more guidance counselors, more social workers will alleviate the need for so many law enforcement
Oh,
officers.
absolutely. I think there's no
Yeah.
denial, we need more boots on the ground. We
Right.
need more
Sneakers, not
wraparound
boots, sneakers.
Service.
sneakers on the ground.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, Mr. Dowling?
I would think that one of the best ways to affect that is for very early involvement of the board in the budget process, much more aggressively than we currently have planned. We basically look at an almost finished product of the budget when it comes to us. And that is not going to give you folks the amount of time to discuss the intricacies of what you need in terms of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever it takes to satisfy what the priority is. And April 21st is just way too late.
Right, and so that's, Ms. Rowley, I think you're right, and so that's why that process, I've asked, have you asked for it? And so is HR talking to the, you know, CFO that's talking to the chief instructional, and is everybody coming to the table and, you know?
So my understanding that our conversation with finance is earlier, starting this year in December.
It is.
Actually,
That's
so
when-
that
that's when they are in
conversation is
December.
much earlier than it has been in the past. So we could say, these are the amount of eggs you're gonna have, figure out what you're gonna make with these eggs, because for everything we want, we have to give something up. Right, so my understanding, these conversations are much earlier than in the past, which is healthy, but it
Yes.
will be continually fine-tuned, and then gives more opportunity for conversation with the board.
So all your, the special education, the secondary, the elementary, they're all gonna bring this to you so that
Well,
you go to the board?
my division was presented last week, I didn't share with you some slides sharing what are your expectations, what is your budget, what is your perceived, what do you need, how are you executing your budget, and now let's look to the future. It was 5 slides, they have to start answering because they're gonna have meetings with me. SPED has already started that conversation, and we have started that conversation amongst us within my division already, yes.
Okay. Well, then I'd like
I
to
already did
just
the math.
maybe make a motion that we accept this PE to bring to the full board with the presentation. I think it's be very helpful for you to, not this entire thing by any means, but this,
The numbers, yeah.
this.
And the fact that they shorten the days.
Right,
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
Not to-
so that in the full board then.
Forward.
Yes, Mr. Daly?
And I think you can help yourselves by insisting that the instructional budget be looked at as the instructional budget, as a separate piece, rather than an ingredient, okay? It's your budget, and it's not finance's budget. Everybody thinks I'm picking on finance. It's not finance's budget. Finance's role to say is, how would we get the money for this? But you folks decide what should be in that instructional budget. And the board, I think, would be far better off to view the instructional budget as that, and not just a component of an overall budget. That's
Right,
given
I'm
to
hoping
the
that that's
board.
what this
That's
new
the
process will be.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
Hi, can I just interject just one thing, just from listening? I would think that because you have the committee structure, the discussion going to the academic department in terms of what their needs are will help them when they build their budget. Because if I understand correctly, as a former board member, budgets are built by departments. It's not built by board, it's built by departments. So when the committees share with the division level, they take that back and build their budget before it comes to the board. So I would think this interaction that we're talking about now is very helpful to the academic staff in terms of how they proceed.
I think you're absolutely right, absolutely, and this is great conversation to have.
It helps them.
Right, so, you know, like Dr. Strato said,
Well,
something that
all
has,
of
something that has to go because in replace, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Naviance.
Not a problem, with pleasure.
Go with Naviance.
And actually, we have already met and discussed Naviance. And actually, the last PD that I held with the counselors last week, I have already reached out to the state level for things, for programs in online, database program that will replace Naviance and we not pay a dime. So that's almost $400,000 saved.
$400,000.
That we've already started that process.
Well, there's a lot of guidance counselors right there.
Yes.
And reading
So-
plus.
Yes, so we've already started that process.
Honey, and add that to,
Tricia,
yeah.
you made a motion, but no one seconded it.
Well,
To accept,
She got us back on track.
so, I'm just kinda,
We are making.
Discussion.
to accept PE 1.9 to bring to full board with the presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
That's exactly it.
Was that it?
That's what I said, right?
Okay.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yes.
But I thought Naviance was in the second year of a 3-year contract.
We're in the last year of the second contract.
The last year or the second
The
contract?
second, we renewed the contract 3 years ago, and this is the last year. It will expire in July.
And we will not renew.
That is the
Not at this
intent.
time, it is the
But
intent.
again, we're putting those components in place that
Got
are
it.
free provided by the state.
And then training the guidance
The
counselors.
training has already started.
So,
Perfect, great.
And Dr. Rodriguez said as
That,
well.
Laura's, your comments is right on target in terms of my mindset on where we need to go. You know, everything, John, the same thing. Everything is secondary to our instructional design. How we make that happen now might be some decision making, but the instructional design is foremost. Yeah, in terms of where we're going.
what's needed,
Yeah.
you know, so, yeah, all right, so, we then would have an academic report
December 10th?
December 10th, or is it usually the second meeting of the month? Which
We only
don't
have one.
I know, so,
No.
okay, great, so then it would be December 10th at the board meeting. Present PE 1.9 with a shortened presentation, just, you know how you really wanted us to see this? I might, you know, but also, it's really very important that
Yeah.
if you're going to push for that, what are we using to show that it's worthwhile, that it's working?